So we have some new information about the Silicon Valley bank bailout, which, in my estimation, sort of proves that it was a scam all along. Whenever anybody tried to pitch it to you like, oh, this has to be done in order to save the economy, total nonsense. So this is in Truth Out here. They say the 10 largest deposit accounts at SVB held 13 billion, FDIC chair says. One researcher called the SVB bailout a good illustration of the enormous class bias in American policymaking. So one of the points that people made in the wake of SVB crashing is that you couldn't create a bank that was a more clear example of one that could be allowed to fail. Why? Because it's the bank of venture capital. It's the bank of the tech industry, and it was sort of, it's not like a standard bank. It's not a normal bank. You had like over 95% of depositors held more than that $250,000 number in their accounts. So this isn't a mom and pop bank. It's not regular working people. This is a bank of elites. And so when it went down, and then you have the FDIC rush in and say, oh, we're going to backstop you guys, so don't worry about it. And then you had the Fed jump in and say, we're going to do a $300 billion backstop as well. Should have been red flags everywhere. Why acting so quickly? Why are you acting so quickly to address this when, normally when there's some sort of a crisis that regular people are dealing with, not only does it not get addressed quickly, it doesn't get addressed at all. But for this, they rushed out and said, oh, we got to bail them out. Well, now we know why. So they say, in prepared testimony for a Senate Banking Committee hearing slated for Tuesday morning, the chair of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation reveals that the 10 largest deposit accounts at Silicon Valley Bank held a combined $13.3 billion, a detail that's likely to intensify criticism of federal regulators' intervention in the firm's recent collapse. When SVB was spiraling earlier this month, the FDIC, Treasury Department, and Federal Reserve rushed in to backstop the financial system and make all depositors at the California bank whole, including those with accounts over $250,000, the total typically covered by FDIC insurance. At SVB, the depositors protected by the guarantee of uninsured depositors included not only small and mid-sized business customers, but also customers with very large account balances. FDIC Chief Martin Grunberg writes in his prepared testimony, the 10 largest deposit accounts at SVB held $13.3 billion in the aggregate. Grunberg goes on to estimate that the FDIC's $125 billion deposit insurance fund, which is financed primarily by assessments on insured banks and backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government, took a $20 billion hit as a result of the SVB intervention. According to Grunberg, nearly 90%, $18 billion, of the DIF loss stemming from SVB is attributable to the cost of covering uninsured deposits. He added that the DIF absorbed a roughly $1.6 billion cost to cover uninsured deposits at Signature Bank, which failed shortly after SVB. So, David Dayen has done some great reporting on this, and he called this the billionaire bailout, because that's what it is. The FDIC chair's testimony comes as federal regulators continue to face scrutiny for glaring oversight failures in the lead up to the collapse and backlash over the emergency response, which many have characterized as a bailout for the wealthy and well-connected given SVB's role as a major lender to venture capital and tech startups. Billionaire Peter Thiel, whose firm was accused of helping spark a bank run by advising clients to pull their money from SVB, told the Financial Times that he had $50 million in a personal account at the bank when it failed earlier this month. The bailout really did protect billionaires from taking a modest haircut, Matt Stoller of the American Economic Liberties Project tweeted in response to Grunberg's testimony. That point is 100% correct. The bailout really did protect billionaires from taking a modest haircut. That's what happened here. Writing for the American Prospect on Monday, Revolving Door Project researcher Dylan Gauch-Lewis called the federal government's swift action in the wake of SVB's failure a good illustration of the enormous class bias in American policymaking. As soon as corporations and the wealthy run into trouble, elites trip over themselves, discarding both law and precedent to rescue them. Gauch-Lewis wrote, noting that federal regulators had to classify SVB's collapse as a systemic risk to the financial system, a disputed characterization, in order to legally guarantee deposits over $250,000. For contrast, Gouch Lewis added, consider student loan forgiveness. The legal justification is clear as day, and the authority itself is used regularly according to the Higher Education Relief Opportunities for Students Act of 2003. The Department of Education can forgive student loans as it sees fit in a national emergency. At bottom, the core reason SVB's depositors got bailed out had little to do with morals or even financial risk. It happened because they had rich and powerful friends with the ear of the president's chief of staff. Broke students don't. The students have to organize and campaign for decades to get something far worse than what they wanted. And for that to hang in the balance of the Supreme Court, the SVB depositors just had to whine on Twitter and make a few calls. That is exactly right. This is a phenomenal article. It's a phenomenal article in Truth out here. It's exactly right. I mean, the point I keep going back to is there's 500,000 medical bankruptcies every single year in this country. 500,000 medical bankruptcies. Nobody rushes in and says, oh my God, this is horrendous. This can't stand. We're destroying our fellow citizens. They're going bankrupt because they got sick. This is crazy. We need to address this. We need to bail them out. Nobody says that. But a bank for billionaires runs into some trouble and they get bailed out, no questions asked, like that. Like that. So this gives the whole game away, doesn't it? That the 10 largest deposit accounts at SVB held $13 billion. And guess what? Now they've been made whole. So it tells you who the government is really working for in no uncertain terms. All right, guys, that's the show. I love y'all very much. Thank you, as always, for listening. Do me a favor, click the like button, click the subscribe button, because I'm hurting today, dog. I'm hurting today with the sickness I had. You know, I'm barely recovered at all, but I wanted to push through and make sure to give you guys a show. Hopefully you enjoyed it. All right, I love all you guys. Typical standard plugs. Patreon link below. Support your boy over there. Substack link below. Support Crystal, Kyle, and friends over there. And everybody can listen to the full shows on Spotify. We post them every time we have a full show. So if you want to listen in podcast form, you go over there. And yeah, that's all I got for you, man. I love you all, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace. If you want to see me and Crystal Ball interview legends like Noam Chomsky, Cornel West, and more, subscribe to Crystal, Kyle, and Friends on Substack. $5 a month gets you the video version a day early. Remember, we take 0 ad dollars for this podcast. Or you can sign up on Substack for free and get the audio version a day later. Link in the video description box below.